To innovate is to do things that the others are scared to do. Princess has got a fabulous history. Maintaining the heritage of the brand is absolutely vital. But that doesn't mean that you can't be brave. When we start a project, one of the first questions I ask the team is, what's new? What is going to be the thing about this that people are going to say, gosh, nobody's ever thought of that? In Princess, we relish trying to figure out how to rethink the way we do things, rethink how we do naval architecture, rethink how we do design. To innovate is to do things that the others are scared to do.
It's always exciting starting any new project. The main challenge of this boat really is its proportion. So 95 feet long, to be able to get the main saloon and a huge flybridge with an air-conditioned sky lounge encased on top is actually quite a challenging proportion to work with. So from quite an early stage we realised it was a chance to do a completely new layout that we hadn't looked at before.
Incredibly exciting, the feeling of creative freedom you get when it is a completely clean sheet of paper. We wanted it to be very airy, very light inside, have a good flow between indoor and outdoor. To do that, we wanted to include an unprecedented amount of glass.
The challenge there for us was to make a hull that would support the weight of that volume of accommodation on that waterplane. That requires innovative ideas. We had never produced a hull that looks like this before.
When we started designing, it was something that we never seen before. So we spent a lot of time sketching, designing, studying new shapes. And the core element was this ribbon of the flybridge that was connecting the flybridge with the hardtop. And this was giving a nice dynamic shape to the boat, something new, something that was never seen before.
From an interior styling point of view, we started from scratch effectively and set a completely new styling language for this. Because of the specific proportions of this craft, it just meant that there was so much more flexibility for how far it could go. So I can remember being in review sessions and you have 30 different designs on the wall of how that could look.
She's got probably 30% more internal volume than any other 95-foot boat we've designed. So the temptation is always to fill the volume, but actually we wanted to create a really architectural interior on this boat. So we deliberately didn't want to fill the space. We wanted there to be a lot of design elements in there, but when you walk in, it's a sum of all the parts. It's walking in and going, there's something about this. I can't put my finger on it, but it works.
With every yacht that we work on, you're always trying to push the boundaries, so it's not okay for it to just be good. It's got to be as close to perfect as it can be.
The X95 is the ultimate living space, both inside and out, in terms of volume, in terms of comfort. She's architectural, she's different, and she's going to make heads turn.
Okay, so welcome everybody. We have a global audience all tuned in to Facebook Live to experience the launch of the first X95 for Princess. And to all of our viewers today, we have the cross-section of people responsible for the X95 from within Princess, who are all here to answer all of the questions that have been coming in online. And we're going to take you on a little journey about the X95. I'm going to go clockwise around the room for introductions. My name is Kieran Haslam and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Princess Yachts. Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul McKenzie and I'm the Chief Technical Officer and Chief Operating Officer.
I'm Will Green, Chief Sales Officer.
Sarah Veery, and I was responsible for overseeing the interior design of the boat.
I'm Andy Lawrence, Design Director.
I'm Anthony Sheriff, CEO.
So the reason that we all were all so keen to do this was because this is the origin of the journey in many ways. We're on a mock-up, and we know that this is unique. But Anthony, for those who haven't been on or who don't know the Princess world and don't know our philosophy behind building a mock-up and starting there, do you want to say a little bit about that?
This is in his South Yard where Sir Francis Drake kept the British naval fleet, and we use it to build models of full-scale, perfect models of all of our decks. We have a team of geniuses who work with plywood and can create all the forms that you see right now that perfectly replicate the design of the boat. So rather than trying to use some of the more modern tools like virtual reality, which we do use, which don't give you a great idea of space, we actually build it and make sure that all the clearances are right and that as a livable space, it works both aesthetically as well as functionally, and that's what we're in right now. So this was built, and we were walking and living on this boat years before we actually built the first hull.
I always think to myself, if you're going to spend multiple millions on a mansion in central London, you get the great architect to be part of that project for you. They're not going to build a one-to-one scale
No, they might build you a little model,
yeah. They're probably going to open a laptop and walk you through it.
Absolutely.
And so for customers to come here, it's unique, isn't it? I mean, it's just one of those things that...
If you think, we've sold 9 of these so far, and nobody's actually seen one.
Yeah.
So,
But they feel like they have.
they feel like they have because
Yeah.
they can come and walk through full scale.
So ordinarily you'd see us doing this in the south of France at a wonderful boat show such as Cannes, where we'd have the X95 in front of us and we'd be doing a press conference and then taking people through the boat. But this time we're doing it a little bit differently by starting where it all began with this fantastic mock-up here in the ropery on our South Yard facility. And so a lot of questions have come into our inboxes saying, what really instigated the X95 and how did the idea go from an idea to paper?
I've been fortunate enough to be a Princess for the last 4.5 years now, and when I first joined and was feeling my way around boats, coming from other types of vehicles, meaning sports cars, I remember vividly sitting on one of our 75 motor yachts at the Singapore Boat Show at the helm, and sort of wondering, what does one do with all this space in front, which is the foredeck of the boat? And couldn't we find a way of trying to use that space to more effect? And so I came back and sat down with the team, with Andy, and I said, is there any way that we could get rid of the helm station on the main deck and make this massive space on the main deck and put the helm station somewhere up top? And this evolved into 2 questions. A, does it work? 3 questions. B, does it float? And C, does it look great? Hopefully, I think we've gotten to a point where the answer is yes, yes, and yes. That's how it started, I think. Remember, I did the first sketch, and you said, that looks terrible.
I filed it. I filed it somewhere.
Somewhere.
But yeah, I think fundamentally that was the start. It was Anthony asking, why do you do it that way? Which got us all thinking, really challenging. Why is a traditional flybridge layout the way it is? And that's not to say that it's wrong, but this is just a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I think what came out of this is what we tried to do is say, is there a better type of flybridge boat or a different type of flybridge boat, as you said? And if you look at the auto industry, where sport utility vehicles have really taken a major step forward because they offer more space, more flexibility, and are more informal can we translate that into a boat, a sort of a sport utility boat? We thought about SUB, but somebody told me that the sub goes underwater and this is above the water. So we stuck with X-Class instead. And this is a yacht that tries to have and does have an incredible amount of space and flexibility and a sort of lack of formality about her that makes it quite special.
And going into the organization and taking it through that journey, Paul, in terms of that development of the idea onto paper and then into the real world and this physical mock-up that we're sitting in, how does that take shape?
Well, I guess the start was coming up with a product brief, was really trying to understand what are we trying to deliver. So there were so many questions. I mean, the pre-concept work for the X95 lasted, gosh.
Oh, good 16 weeks.
Yeah, oh.
At least.
At least, yeah, because it took a long time, because it was so out of the normal for us to really do this. So it really took a lot of back and forth.
What does pre-concept mean?
Really that early work, just to check that it's actually going to work. So, is there a general arrangement that actually answers all of the questions? And it's not about coming out with sort of one design that works. It's about those multiple ones, reviewing it as a team, as a lot of us would have been part of that, and actually seeing, okay, and that's a nice touch. That's okay. We need to move that and get the proportions right. And that's really part of the process. And it took a long time on the X95, but actually, as well as that, we actually realised that the hull form was going to be very different on the X95. The wave piercing bow is a very different hull form for for Princess, and so we actually, when was the last time we went in the tank test on a boat? It's probably because
it would have been a 40 metre.
Yeah, so a long time ago. Normally it's a tried and tested. We do it through the computer modelling, but this one was such a move away. Princess are known as solid seakeeping boats, and we needed to make sure that this wasn't going to damage that reputation at all. So we actually went into the tank, which was an interesting part of the exercise, wasn't it?
And she's better.
I think that's the other thing that sort of introduced the concept of X-Class. And I know we don't refer to her as an explorer, because an explorer means something, but it does imply that exploration, long range, and it's, if you go back a couple of decades, stabilisation didn't exist, and now most boats are stabilised, certainly most boats over 60 feet. And that has resulted in people using their boats differently. So instead of racing to get to a destination and then having fun, it's enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
And more of our customers are going slower and enjoying getting there.
One of the things that you and I have spoken about previously, I think we were in Australia standing around a Studebaker Avanti at the time, and you brought up Raymond Loewy, and the whole idea of that pushing the Maya concept of design. So do you want to tell some of the viewers about that Maya concept and how it fits into the polarizing nature of the X95?
Sure. Maya, most advanced yet acceptable, which means how far can you go without going over the edge, so people say, don't know about that. And Raymond Loewy, for those of you who don't know, is probably the greatest industrial designer of the 20th century. He designed the Coke bottle, he designed the interior of Concorde, and he designed the Skylab, actually, not the space station, Skylab he designed. So a iconic designer. And his concept is to try to push the design, push the concept as far as you can get, so that you create something that not only that people can use usefully, but that they also want to buy. And that's what we've tried to do with X95.
Yeah.
I think one of the most, I still remember it now, was so I think the X95 was one of the early boats where we were really introducing the pre-concept, as we say, and we had the first design sketches came in, and I still remember the meeting, because our design team were all trying very, very hard, and so the initial sketches were pretty
they were varied.
They're
varied,
bold,
to say the
I
least.
think bold, varied, and some of the old school they virtually fell off their chairs.
I remember one person in particular looked at it and went, "Oh my goodness," like that. But now everybody loves her.
But I think what was really, I think what was really important for us also was we wanted to make sure that she had the Princess feel. We, as you say, we didn't want it to be a Marmite boat. We didn't want it to be, you know, a love or hate. It needed to be bold and a statement, but it also needed to be instantly recognisable as a princess, which I
exactly being recognisable, being believable is really
which
really
I think
important.
people
and working like a princess. Lots of glass, great visibility, wonderful spaces.
And that's the stuff that you can play with, but there's stuff that you can't play with, which brings us back to the fundamentals of the design process and the way in which we collaborate with other parties. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Andy?
Just to try and simplify it a bit, you can ask the question really, why have 3 design teams? So you have ourselves, the Princess Design Studio, you have Olazinski, and you have Pininfarina. What we're doing there is we're bringing 3 teams together who specialise in certain areas. So from us as an in-house team, you know, it's all about the detail, the layout, how the boat comes together. It's about the furniture styling. It's about the scheme. It's knowing how to build boats, how we use them, how to put them together. Yeah. Then we've got a long-standing relationship with Olazinski, our naval architects. So fundamentally, they're naval architects. They're responsible for the way that the boat performs and the way that it floats, the way she handles, and also a great design and styling team in there. So they work with us on the initial layouts, and we produce those together. They're also partly responsible for the exterior look and feel and styling of the boat. Like we said, 40 years working together. We know the product, we know each other. A new introduction to that is Pininfarina, and they're bringing, maybe not having that experience is a good thing, because they're looking at things differently and they're questioning, why do you do it like that? Or they're just bringing a way of solving a problem, a solution that they might bring from automotive design or architecture or aviation, and just challenging the way that we think.
And I think that when you look at X95, one of the things that's, to me, is really remarkable, as I walked through boat shows, especially on older yachts, they tend to be, from when you look at them from far away, very dramatic, but as you get closer and closer, quite simple in how the surfaces work and the resolution. Flat surfaces, things sort of one on top of another. When you look at X95, there isn't a surface or detail that hasn't been lovingly worked on.
I agree. I don't think we've got a flat surface.
The reflections go beautiful.
It catches the light.
I don't think we have a flat surface anywhere on the
Everything just mates in just perfectly. It's meant to be that way. Somebody's looked at it, they've spun it around, they've designed every chamfer, they've looked at the reflection with lights coming from lots of different directions. So the level of sophistication is not something that you see in a picture at first glance, but as you spend more and more time looking at her, it's just, you realize just how much thought has gone into the detail. Every curve, every surface is just beautifully thought out.
I think that's true of the exterior and the interior. You shouldn't look and get all of the answers immediately. You should look and get an initial impression, and you get a big wow, and this is great. This feels good.
The longer you spend on our boats, and certainly on this boat, the more detail you see and the more you appreciate. You know, I think we design our boats where we don't. I think a lot of boat designers design the boats like a boutique hotel. You're going to go in there and you're going to spend 3 days in it. And when you first walk in or onto the boat or whatever, you're going to go, "Wow, this is amazing!" And you're going to be assaulted by everything. But then after about 3 days, like the boutique hotel, you're going to want to leave it and go home to something that's a little bit more relaxing. And I think what we've been doing really well, and particularly on this boat, is creating something that at first sight is so wow. I mean, really wow. But also, the more time you spend actually living on her, the more you start slowing down and really relaxing, and then you start taking in all the little detail that, you know, we are renowned for.
Just to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind what motivates us within our roles at Princess, and therefore how do we approach our role at Princess?
I think from my perspective, I try to stay away from looking at boats. I mean, I love interior design. I love finishes. I love the shapes of things, and so I sort of look outside the boating industry. So when you guys are all dragging me around at boat shows and I'm not taking much interest, it's because it's quite formulaic when you look at boat shows of the way people build boats, and is certainly from an interior design perspective. But I think if you can look outside that and look at boutique hotels and beautiful villas in places like Ibiza and far-flung countries in, I don't know, Costa Rica, somewhere like that. And if you're constantly looking at magazines and you're genuinely interested, that's where hopefully what you produce comes out looking a little bit different. And my hero is Leonardo da Vinci, and simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I think that's what that was the driver for us when we were designing the interior of this boat.
Yeah. I think what we don't necessarily design our boats for manufacture. You know, and there's always going to be a healthy tension between design but you go on some boats and they're square corners. They've been designed because that's the easiest way of making them. There's definitely with a Princess, they're not overly fussy, but they've got some beautiful surfaces. Now, you know, so we design them to be beautiful. We don't necessarily design them for ease of manufacture, and I think we've got that balance correct.
But we have our secret advantage is that we make everything ourselves.
Everything, of course.
So rather than having a supplier who says, "Oh, you can't do that," or "That's going to be expensive," we have a team of craftsmen. We have almost 1,000 people at Koipul who are doing woodworking, metalwork, and they just relish the challenge of doing something that looks beautiful that is really handcrafted. So there's a lot of, there's lots of images of British luxury firms or Italian luxury firms that have craftspeople who make things themselves. We really do it.
Yeah.
Everything is made in-house.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that those 1,000 people in Koipul, many people refer to them as the largest bespoke furniture company in the United Kingdom, because we design and deliver over 3,700 unique items of furniture in that one facility. But those 1,000 employees at Koipul, they're part of 3,000 employees, which are all within a 10-mile radius of where we're sitting right now here in the southwest of England, which is another remarkable story.
It's not just furniture, it's small mouldings, it's wiring harnesses, it's fuel tanks, water tanks.
The invisible stuff as well.
It's something to be proud of.
I think one thing that you talked about, you see the details, not just necessarily on first view, but the one that's always got me is it's the perceived quality, is on our timber doors, we match the grains. So on our cupboard doors, the grain actually goes across them. Now, it's not something you necessarily see instantly.
No,
but when you see
that's
it,
good
think,
that you
wow,
don't see it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Of course, if you damage one door, then you've got to replace both doors when we make them. So, again, we're not making our life easy, but it's something that I think really differentiates us from the competition. And it's that perceived quality, it's that detail.
Absolutely, and I think what a lot of people don't know, even maybe even sitting around here, is that our supplier of our veneers, they actually go and select the trees on our behalf because they know that we're very specific about the grain we want in our veneers. And so right from the start of cutting down the tree, we've got a guy from our supplier who's out there saying that one will be for Princess, that'll be for Princess. Then they take it in, and then they've got somebody who hand picks through those veneers because they say no, they don't like that grain. That's a bit too wild for them, or that's a bit too straight for them. And so but that is, that really is custom stuff. And remarkable when you think about it.
And Sarah, when you first saw aesthetically the exterior of the product, what words came to mind?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'd been part of the conversation of its journey to that point. But I remember thinking, wow, this really is something different. I was starting to get used to Anthony throwing big challenges at us and thinking outside the box. And everyone that comes along, you kind of get this feeling of excitement and fear in the same measure. But looking at it, you could see that it had so much space, and that was actually going to be fantastic to work with in terms of designing the living spaces inside and out, because in a way that makes our lives easier. What's been amazing about this boat is that we've actually been able to be architectural about it in terms of space. So we've actually worked with the space rather than trying to fill the spaces with storage and seating and furniture. We've been able to say, no, we're going to look at this in a completely different way. We're going to strip it back, but what we put in is going to be really finely resolved and right down to the detail, beautifully shaped, and we've got the space to think about the flow of movement through the boat. So in a way, it was looking at it and going, wow, this is something different for us. We're working in a global, diverse market, and we've got to be able to provide solutions for anybody, any taste, any lifestyle. And actually, you know, we were asked by Will and marketing, please come up with all these options. And I think we were really challenged with that, but I think we've come up with some really interesting options, some different ones, some more predictable ones, but it's also how we've even approached the more predictable ones, like the cinema or that sort of thing. That is what is making this boat really quite original and special.
Yeah. The level of options is a really important point. I don't think we've ever produced a boat with this many predefined options, you know, from right in there from the outset, which gives an almost bespoke custom build feel for the customer, you know, while still having the confidence that it's you know, a factory designed product or layout.
But that's part of the concept of what we did. We created this just massive open palette that we could fill with
an empty deck, really,
country kitchens, master bedrooms on the main deck, and really configure the way that you want.
Yeah, which lifting the helm up onto the top deck and deleting the lower helm, that's what unlocks that. So all of a sudden there's no intrusion in the middle of the boat. You can do essentially what you like.
Yeah, so I think we've been clever with the design, knowing that there are going to be people who want to do their own things. And so, although there's great options, we've also designed it in such a way that we can do other things, which is being demonstrated by the first few slots. So we tried to, you know, make sure that, you know, non-standard options are possible. It was funny, I remember exactly where we're sitting. This was probably one of the most contentious areas of the of the mock-up review.
Yeah, it was.
Because wasn't there a much more
well, we're used to...
Is this the one?
This is the contentious one.
This was the contentious one because of the overhang of that sofa.
This is the one we fought for. This is the one we fought for.
Never have so many people argued over 6 inches of cushioning.
And Anthony was great because he said, no, I like it. It's going to be good.
Do you know, one of the questions which came in was a really interesting one, a very topical question in many ways. It was in reference to what Mercedes-Benz Formula One had just done to change its livery to all black in terms of Black Lives Matter. And so one of our questions which came in on social media was, did we paint the first boat black because of that? And it struck me as soon as we read that question that we could probably explain the typical process of a Princess, because this is all customization. This was the decision of the owner of the first boat to have that color scheme. So maybe Will, you can tell us a little bit about how typically one enters the world of buying an X95 and what that journey sort of looks like.
The idea is to be able to take a customer through a production yard and have all the benefits of the experience of somebody who builds 300 boats a year. It's working with a design consultant to really put your own personalisation on the product, whether it's a painted finish. And the first boat, it looks black. It looks like a James Bond baddie boat, which was kind of the intention from the owner.
Darth Vader was
Darth Vader. I think Star Wars. Yeah.
But impressive.
Far from it in reality, but to get that sort of personalised journey and end up with something that's quite bespoke.
Yeah.
There's always a bit of tension, isn't there? Because, you know, from a manufacturing perspective and a design perspective, we'd love them all the same. We'd love them all just vanilla, you know, just. But of course we've got to speak for yourself.
This is a manufacturing voice.
But all I know is
vision of a 6-pack of £6 million yachts.
All I know is before X95 came along, for the last few years, we've been ticking along at about 10% of the development team working on non-standard options. Today we're at 25%, 25 going up to almost 30%.
Yeah, absolutely,
and that really is, and you think of all the other development projects going on at the moment, actually that's a very large percentage.
Yeah.
We've done it to ourselves, haven't we?
We have, we've done it to ourselves.
We've
created the monster.
35 metre, arguably 40 metre space in a 95 footer, and so we shouldn't be surprised that the customers who come and see the space want to do something with it.
I mean, I think this boat has got something like 40% more internal volume
than anything we've built at
the same length. That's staggering.
I mean, literally, in terms of layer accommodation, crew accommodation, it is equivalent thereabouts to a 35 metre, and it eclipses a 35 metre in terms of its living space. So once you add the saloon and the sky lounge together as two air-conditioned spaces, it is about another 30% bigger.
Yeah, yeah. With the design studio first being an in-house team, which has direct interaction with the customers out there, what would one expect if they first encountered the design studio? Where do you start?
It's grown so much. If we go back to when it started, the design studio was there to help people not make mistakes, because actually it's quite daunting to specify a boat over 80 feet and to choose simple things like timbers and countertops, curtains or blinds, and those things. It's easy to make something really good or something that's not so good. So the idea was there to help customers not find that experience so daunting. But more recently, it's involved members of Andy's and Paul's team, where because of the experience of M-Class, you know, we've become more accustomed to dealing with more complex problems and being challenged by customers who want something different. So yes, you've got a design consultant to work on colour and trim, but it's more than that. It's, you know, these are the things that I want to achieve with this boat, and it might be a single item of furniture, or it might be I want this cabin to do this job for me. I don't want it to be a cabin. I want it to be an office or
a gymnasium.
Yeah, the scope is huge.
Or a gymnasium.
The scope is huge within which they have to work, and it's also gaining the trust of the customer, the owner. And actually, by the end of it, they're normally great friends, and they know so much about each other because it's understanding the lifestyle of an owner, a particular owner, and how they want to use it, and how they really want the boat. Not just, you know, we're going to force on you what we want, and that's just you know, too difficult to do. I think we are really good actually at engaging with the owners and really creating something that. At the end of the day, they say, I really did want that, and they've managed to translate that into what I want.
The team will physically go shopping with them in some cases.
Oh, yes, they do. Yeah, absolutely. Mary's up in Mayfair.
But we may have to take buy something, but then we have to make sure we can sew just simple like lamps and things.
Yep.
We have to then anchor them down.
Yeah, we've got to rod and bolt them.
Yeah, we've actually got to then find a way
them.
of actually.
You know, it's not as simple. You know, even with a table lamp, the switch is in the lead nowadays. So we've got to order it so the switch goes down through the centre of the table lamp, and it's got a rod and bolt underneath. I mean, it's getting a bit too involved about a table lamp now, but
it's not just about buying something. Yes, it's about actually then modifying it.
It's
to
in the detail.
To work
Everything
with
is
the
in
boat.
the detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same applies to a sofa. We were laughing about the saloon arrangement, but you know, and why can't I just have this sofa? I like this. Well, because underneath that sofa is, you know, an air conditioning.
An air conditioning unit,
and so it's about being able to deliver what a customer wants while satisfying the engineering requirements of the yacht, the manufacturing requirements of how we're going to put it together. It's the whole journey, and trying to make that as seamless as possible for the owner and to make it fun.
Yeah.
There are some pretty cool features on the first X95 that's around us as well. One of them is for example, the outdoor cinema. Which is a very, very cool feature. I mean, that's a space that, you know, at the end of a day in the sea and sea bobbing, and you come back up and want to have a relaxing evening, and you're out on the fly watching a great film. What are some of the other things which are stand out for you on the first couple of X95s that have been requested?
Well, we've got some quite big changes certainly on slot 1. We've got a gym in a lower accommodation, so the lower VIP cabin was split up and reconfigured with a berth over on one side and a gym with a running machine and various bits of weight equipment or whatever you have in there.
I've got to say, I'm going to interrupt you. I always said, well, you know, why would you put a running machine down there? And we were out in a sea trial a couple of weeks ago, and we were going along, and the running machine is right by a big window. And the water is rushing by, and I could just imagine actually being on the running machine. It almost feels like you're running across the water.
Running through the water.
It's fantastic.
Really
Incredible
cool.
right there.
You're literally
cool.
inches from the water in that cabin. It feels great, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think, as you were saying, Paul, you know, it was beyond the original concept, because putting a running machine in a cabin sounds quite simple.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got a cabin, put a running machine in, but running machines sit quite high off the floor.
Yeah, they take a lot of depth.
And if you're running on the running machine that's high off the floor, you might hit your head on the ceiling. So we had to pocket out the deck head and put a pocket in the ceiling. And we had to do the same in the deck, which meant cutting into the tray, modifying the tanks underneath. And it was quite complex.
We go to great lengths to allow our customers to walk on water.
We've had a question which has come in, which we get this question a lot. I'm happy for any of you guys to answer this, or everybody to answer this. What is the craziest request that we have had in terms of a customer asking or requesting something on a
We're
Princess?
all going to answer the same thing. I mean, we
Are we allowed to say this on Facebook Live?
Yeah, exactly. This is the ones we're allowed to say. We had the guy who wanted his motorbike on the back of a 30-metre, wasn't it? But he didn't only want it on the back of his boat, he wanted it up on the flybridge, and he wanted it visible.
In a glass case.
So, you know, he wanted a glass case. And that was like, OK, that's interesting.
Exactly.
And I think we had to put bigger crane on, didn't we? We had to strengthen the deck. Yeah. We had to
lift a ton.
Yeah, we had to get the glass box so that it wouldn't smash, to secure it.
That was
quite dramatic, wasn't it?
That was at Cannes when I joined the company.
Yeah,
and that was one of the first boats I saw and thought,
yeah, these guys are nutters.
How does this glass case split open and the owner ride out?
The glass case doubled as a bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
wow.
And I actually, that glass case attracted all sorts of issues to resolve as well, in terms of extinguishing systems for the bike had to hold fuel in it and all the rest of it. So there were safety mechanisms and systems that had to be built into it as well, which were really complex.
Yeah, absolutely mad.
I always wanted to know if he rode his bike on the flybridge.
Yeah. You could ride his bike on the super flybridge.
Yeah, true. When we were looking at the flybridge for the first time, and we realised just how much space we had extracted out of this product, I know that we all saw this as something very, very cool and very special. And cool's an interesting word because we talked a lot about it when we launched the R35 a couple of years ago as well. We talked about what makes something cool. You know, why is Steve McQueen cool to some people? Why is Muhammad Ali so cool to some people? What is it that it has that makes something really cool? And I know that the term dropped at that moment was Superfly. And I'm a huge fan of 70s cinema and an even bigger fan of Curtis Mayfield. So that resonated deeply with me. But do you want to explain the use of that term, Anthony?
Well, it's a super flybridge, and so Superfly seemed like fun. But, you know, we just don't try to take ourselves too seriously. But the flybridge is really a massive part of about what the X95 is all about. You know, I like to say it's almost like an aircraft carrier. You've got a flybridge that runs the full length of the yacht, and with that space, you can, there's not a boat anywhere close to this size that you can walk all the way around the flybridge, front and rear, and just have this incredible view where you stand on the side of the boat and look out, or stand right at the front of the boat and do your Titanic thing. And so it's such a cool boat in the way that she's conceived, and has a super flybridge that Superfly just seemed like a fun way to express that.
With regards to a standard product, a standard X95, one viewer has asked, how long does it take to build? So a typical build of an X95.
That's a good question. Order to delivery is about a year, if there's no waiting list, from the time you put your specification in to the time that the boat pops out the end. And that doesn't include the whole 12 months being in assembly. That's making the molds, making the major molds, making the furniture, which one doesn't see in the fit-out shop, but it's happening behind the scenes. Ordering engines, ordering kit. But yeah,
it's pretty quick, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and we're fortunate. We've done quite well with the X95. We're now selling the next lot for autumn of next year, and so people are already thinking about summer of 2022, and that's how far you need to think ahead to build a project like this.
And that's before anybody's had the opportunity to see a complete boat.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, which is also a remarkable situation to be in. I mean, at the moment, the first boat has been delivered and the family are currently on it, enjoying it out at sea. The second X95 is in build right now, and it's in its final stages. one question that came into us was what has caused us the biggest hassle or headache, or what was the biggest challenge with the first X95?
Well, I can name one. As you say, we've got one being used and 2 in build. We've actually got 7 in build.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest challenges is with a 95-foot boat in volume. Every major mould is 100 feet long. That's a lot of space. That's a lot of factory space. And the result is that Southyard now is dedicated to the X95, because it's built, it's in demand, and we've sold lots of them. And that's been, it's put pressure on other boats. It's meant that we've had to change our production plan for M class, and other boats have been affected. So it's a nice problem to have.
It is. I mean, one of the statistics, which I think is great, is I think there's 95 pieces of glass on the boat. So in terms of the amount of glass, it's by far, and just the handling of those pieces of glazing, so massive. So even that, from an operations perspective, has been a real challenge. And as Will said, everything is big on
That's
the
right.
X95.
There's very few standard components. Even the huge transformer platform, which is this mechanism on the back end that lifts the platform up and down into the water and sort of presents you with a big staircase down into the water. That is, we've pushed our suppliers so hard on that. It's not off the shelf. It's probably 1.5 meters wider than anything they've ever produced before.
Just to put it in scale, how much does it weigh, Paul?
Do you know? I don't know. You talk about the total boat?
No, the transformer.
I don't know how much the
tons. Yeah, it's about 2 tons, 2-3 tons.
I don't know. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, just for the benefit of the cameras then, Paul, that transformer that Andy just mentioned,
About 2 tons.
about 2 tons, is it?
Yeah, about 2 tons. Yeah.
And one viewer has asked us about alternative propulsion systems, Anthony, and do we have a view on that and how Princess will develop going forward?
Sure. I think that that the most important thing to focus, a lot of talk about specific technologies. Are you going to have a hybrid? Are you going to have electrification? Are you going to whatever? The most important thing ultimately is to reduce the carbon footprint of a product in the market. And so whether you achieve that by having a more efficient powertrain or by having a more efficient hull actually doesn't make a difference to that. And we've been focusing a lot at the moment on hull form. Paul was talking about how we have a very different concept for the boat that we did tank testing on, and it's actually given us even better stability results than we previously had. So it's really ticked the Princess box, but importantly, it's about 15% less resistance going through the water than the hull of another boat that size that we might have built in the past. So we've been focusing a lot on that because that comes for free. Yeah, just by working really hard on the hydrodynamics, you can get a boat with better stability, with the space inside, and that takes less effort to go through the to go through the water, which allows you to have a relatively smaller sized engine to push the boat through the water and therefore get better efficiency. At the same time, though, we're also looking at a lot of other technologies. We're looking at hybridization, electrification. Really doesn't work that well for a long-range yacht because we did the calculation on the back of an envelope once, and we figured that to have the same range as we have today with an electric yacht, you'd need another yacht just for the batteries that would go alongside it. So that doesn't work. But what we don't want to do is do things that look great from a marketing perspective but actually don't do anything for the customer. So to have a hybrid is, yeah, it's a nice thing to do, but it's got to work and really give real-world advantages to the customer and real improvements in the carbon footprint. In the automotive world, mild hybrids or hybrids which have stop-starts work because cars start and they stop. Boats don't spend a lot of time stopping in the water and then going off again at traffic lights in the middle of the ocean. So that concept doesn't really work in a yacht. So we're working really hard to look at, can we create something that really will have usage benefits, special modes that allow you to travel quietly and silently for periods of time, and also really do in real life reduce the carbon footprint to the customer. Stay tuned on this channel.
I think talking a bit more about the hull shape, if you compare her to recent Princesses of the same size, this boat has a combined slot 1 X95, combined horsepower of 3,800 horsepower. and as we've already talked about, the volume of a 35 metre, and top speed, full of fuel, a dozen people on board, full tanks. She's doing 23 knots, and we're getting the same speed in the previous generation with a combined horsepower of 5,200 horsepower. And at 10 knots, we're getting a range of just under 2,000 nautical miles, which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it.
And that smaller engines consume a lot less fuel and have a lot less of a footprint.
Yeah, true. And another question which came in was looking at the trajectory that we've been on in terms of innovation and the real push from Princess over the last couple of years with the R35, now the X95. And the viewer is asking, what comes next? How do we keep on this trajectory, and where do we take where we are today into the future?
I don't know the answer to the question, but I can help set the stage.
Sure.
Which is, whenever we launch a new boat, and never more so than with the X95, because this thing is very different and it's fantastic. I love it. And you look at it and you say, it's perfect. What will we ever do? And every time we launch a new boat, I think those poor guys in design and development, where do you go from here? How do you then change a fresh piece of paper and immediately start on whatever comes next? I don't know.
And they've already started, because we've got lots of other projects which are currently in play right now. So actually that journey is already taking place as we talk, as we speak. As the first owner is enjoying their X95, we're already on a mission to move forward.
We have a product plan, and we've got the vision of what the next 3, 5, 10 years looks like. We're never standing still. We're always looking. Sometimes it's quite frustrating. Oh, I've got to change it again. But actually, it's exactly where we need to be. We should never get comfortable and think that that's good enough. Isn't it? It never is.
Yeah, exactly. When you move into a new class of yacht, a new sort of design concept like this, you're never sure whether it's going to be a one-off. And I think the feedback that we've had on this boat is it's been accepted by the marketplace, and not just accepted. I think it's opened a few people's eyes as to what a boat actually should be and how we use it. And then that's led us into looking at her baby sister, the X80, with the same very similar concept. It's all about taking the helm position, putting up on the top deck, unlocking that main deck accommodation, just giving flexibility and choice.
But we've declined her in a different way. I mean, there are parts of the X80 that actually, in my view, work almost better than on the X95. But she's a very special boat because of the qualities that she has. I mean, there's an 80-foot boat with a main deck master. That's unheard of for that size, and we can do that because of the palette that we've laid out. But part of what we do to think about the future is to look at some of the concepts that we have and say, can we decline them in different sizes of boats, and what can we do to make things better? I always joke that designers are actually cursed, because designers, when the product comes out, they've already been looking at it for 3 years and it's old. And so nothing's ever new, and they're always in 3 years in the future thinking about what comes next. And it's an uncomfortable place to be. And it gets very easy to get lazy and just sort of revert back to a slight refresh and revarnish over what exists today. And so the challenge that we always put for ourselves and that we always need to do is, whenever we're looking at a new product, saying what's new, what's different, why is this a massive step forward from what we've done before? And if you can't answer that question, it doesn't make any sense to spend the time and money doing it. It's only worth doing it if you're going to have a better product. And so what's next? Don't know. We're working on lots of things, but if it's not interesting and better and a big step forward, we're not going to do it.
Yeah, it is what gets us out of bed. I mean, if you're doing the same thing all the time as a creative person, certainly, life gets very boring. You want that challenge. Every time you think you've got to the limit, to the ceiling of what you can do, somebody puts another challenge in front of you. You have a few sleepless nights, and then you get up, you pick yourself up, and you get on with it. And then you look back and you think, well, yeah, we did that, and at the beginning we were terrified, full of fear and excitement, and that's probably why we love our jobs, isn't it?
Yeah, great. And on that note, once again, we say thank you to all of you guys for being here and going through this Facebook Live presentation. Thank you to everybody who's viewing right now, to Anthony, Andy, Sarah, Will, and Paul. and from myself, Kieran. It's really, really great that, that we had your time, and we welcome you back to interact with us at Princess anytime you can. At some point in time, we may be back at boat shows. At the moment, we're still working through what the new normal looks like, and so we don't know when that will be, but we're hoping it's going to be soon, and we can interact in much closer proximity with the real-life products there for everybody to come and explore. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
For all of your time.
Pleasure.
And thank you to our audience.
Thanks.
I still remember that first meeting where I saw those initial sketches and seeing the look on people's faces. I thought they were going to fall off their chairs.
The X95 is very different from anything we've ever developed before.
It is the ultimate living space, both inside and out.
This is the best of all things Princess plus plus.
She's got 30% more internal volume than any other 95-foot boat.
This is going to be one of the most potent offerings that we've brought to market in our 54-year history.
Nothing really prepares you for this boat.
It is special. It is different.
We call it Superfly.